Hey guys, it's Elena. Today I wanted to take you along with me while I experiment on the idea of an acrylic pour butterfly in Procreate, and this idea was requested by a lovely lady named Deb from my community, and she was inspired by a artist named Tatiana Tenney. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this artist has a style of floaty, colorful artwork with ink on top of it. So I've added a link to this artist's store in Society 6 in the description, so you can go check out her work if you want to. And so thank you also to Deb, who has requested this. So in order to experiment on this idea, we're going to be using my acrylic pour brush set for Procreate, which is for sale in the link in the description. And if you want to experiment with any other types of brushes that you have, maybe watercolor or alcohol ink or just any kind of brushes that you want to try, I definitely would encourage you to experiment with that. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So we will start out by making a new canvas with the plus button in the corner. And I'm going to do a canvas that's 3000 by 2000 pixels at 300 dpi. And I'm using my Inky Abstract color palette, which is free, in the link in the description. And I'm using my acrylic pour brushes, which are paid, and the link for that purchase is in the description below. And I'd also encourage you to experiment with any other brushes that you might have, which have a lot of texture in them. So I'm swiping up from the bottom and grabbing my Unsplash app and then bringing it over to the right for split screen, and I'm searching the word butterfly. So I wanted to find a butterfly image from Unsplash that I can use as a template. Some of you might be really good at drawing and you want to just draw your own outline, but I just wanted to trace an outline of a butterfly. So I found a picture that I wanted to use, and I'm dragging it over from the Unsplash app. And I'm just going to rotate it a little bit in order to get it sort of centered on the screen and get it where I want it. So now I'm closing the Unsplash app, and I'm going to trace around this butterfly in order to get the outline. So I've added a new layer above it, and I'm renaming the butterfly layer to butterfly photo, and the layer above it I'm going to name butterfly outline. So in the layer above, that's where I'm going to make my outline, and that's important because you don't want to draw directly on top of the photo for this. So in order to draw the outline, I'm going to scroll down to the sketching folder, which is a default Procreate folder. And I'm just using the Procreate pencil for this. And you can really use any sort of brush that gives you a straight line. So I'm just roughly tracing this outline of the butterfly so that I can use that for a template. So now I've turned off the butterfly photo, and you can see a very rough outline of the butterfly. So I'm adding a new layer above all of that, and I'm renaming the new layer acrylic pour. So the butterfly outline is not going to be showing, but it's just something I will use as a guide. So I've moved that acrylic pour layer below the butterfly outline in order to have that showing at all times over top of what I'm going to be painting. So I am choosing a green color and navigating back to my acrylic pour brush set. And I wanted to start out by adding some texture from the fluid pour brushes at the top of the brush set. So I'm starting out with fluid pour number 6 in the green color, and I'm just going to add a couple of different strokes with this in a couple different colors, and I'll just be building up the texture in this way with a couple of different colors, a couple of different textures. So now I've chosen fluid pour number 7, and again just adding very small amounts of this in different places. I'm liking that number 7 because all of the cells in it kind of remind me of butterfly wings. So now I'm switching brushes to fluid pour number 3 and just continuing. And the idea that I was kind of forming at this point was that I wanted to have more pink and orange on the right side and more blue and green on the left side. For no particular reason, that's just what I wanted to do. So this other brush I've chosen, number 2, is got some wispy bits on the edges, and so I thought that might look kind of good around the edge of this piece so that it would kind of fade outward with these wispy bits. So now I've gone to the magic wand and Liquify, and it's set to push, and the size is at about 30, pressure's all the way up, and I'm going to use this push Liquify to kind of get the texture inside of the template. So I'm leaving a couple of wispy bits outside and even pulling some of those outward. But generally I'm going to try and make it all fit into the outline shape. And I'm just changing the size of the Liquify as necessary. So when I was pulling the wisps out, I had a smaller size, and I made it big in order to push everything inside. And again, over here, I'm just leaving some of these green wispy bits coming out, I want it to look kind of like it's on white paint and wisping out into the white paint. So I'm just changing the size to smaller in order to get up into the small cracks up here between the butterfly wings. And using that small brush, I'm just taking some of the wisps and pulling them outward as well. So I'm kind of working intuitively with this. I'm just trying to manipulate it so that it looks good in a way that I like. This is where you can really interpret it your own way, and just be open to trying different things until it fits in a way that makes you happy. So I'm just kind of looking back now that I've gone all the way around. I'm just kind of surveying what I've done and trying to make it look a bit more uniform between the two sides. So now I've switched to the smudge tool, and you probably will need to navigate to the acrylic pour folder under the smudge tool. Mine was already open, and I've chosen the dynamic cells brushes because with the smudge tool you can use the cell brushes to kind of disrupt what is already there rather than adding new colors. So with the smudge tool and the cell brush, I'm just kind of going a bit small around the edges and just adding some cell texture. So now I'm going back up to the smudge tool and switching to the brush that's called Blowtorch, which is also cells, but it's very small cells and dense. So I'm using this with the pressure along the outside of the butterfly in order to add some texture to these wispy bits. So now I went to my layers and I turned off the outline just to kind of have a look at how things are coming along. And so I'm actually going to rename that to template because I've made a new layer above the acrylic pour bits that I wanted to make another outline that is one that is actually going to stay on the finished piece. And so I wanted that to look kind of inky. And I'm just going to turn down the template outline layer so that I can see what I'm doing in the layer below. So now I've gone to my brush tool and I've scrolled down to the inking folder that comes with Procreate, and I'm using the brush called Studio Pen. So this comes as default with Procreate. And I'm choosing the darkest, very, very dark purple color from the Inky Abstract palette. And so I'm going to use the Studio Pen in order to make a very, very rough, wispy looking outline of the butterfly. So I'm starting up here by the head and just kind of making a really rough outline. And I'll be using the Liquify on this in a moment. So I didn't want this to look very perfect. The original outline is just kind of a bit more perfect looking, and I wanted this to be some wispy elements coming out from the middle and sort of outlining the wing so that you get an impression of the wing. But I wanted the lines to not be uniform, so I'm trying to vary the pressure in order to make it thicker in some places and thinner in others. And I'm not just drawing all the way around, I'm just drawing along some of it to make it look like it's kind of trailing out. So from the inside of the butterfly, I am just bringing some wispy bits inward and trying to follow the pattern of the acrylic pour that I did previously. So I'm not just drawing lines right on top of that, I'm kind of looking for the natural pathways that branch out from there. So I'm turning off the template outline at this point because I feel like it was just getting in the way. And I did never want that to be part of the original or the finished piece. So I turn that off and I'm just continuing with wispy bits from the middle in a way that feels logical with the patterns that have emerged. So now I'm going back to Liquify under the magic wand, still on push, and I'm turning up the distortion just a bit because I wanted to make these inky lines look a bit distorted. So I'm experimenting with how much distortion I want on the Liquify. I've just turned it up all the way at this point, and I'm lightly tracing over the lines that I've already made in order to add a distorted look to them. So I've noticed that some of these little bits up here are kind of trailing off. So I decided to switch to edge instead of push, and doing that I'm going in a back and forth motion on the edges of these lines, which makes them almost disappear. So now I've switched back to push with the distortion up, and I'm going to continue adding a bit of distortion along each of these lines. And I'm just continuing with the distortion on the push setting on the main part of the butterfly in the middle here. So now I've switched back to the edge function instead of push, and I'm going to go around everywhere that I've already been and take these edges in a back and forth motion in order to make them get really, really thin at the ends, so they're kind of fading into the rest of the ink. And I also decided to continue using the edge liquify function just to make these antennae a little bit smaller as well, and cleaning up the edges of the body. So that is pretty much the end of this version. I think if I were to do it again, I might try a different shape where the wings are sort of facing upward instead of kind of going down. But overall, I'm happy with that. But I also wanted to show you, this is a version of the same project that I did previous to the one I've just shown you, where I laid down some acrylic pour again and added some little bits of color and went at it with Liquify. And the different thing about this version was that I did not use an outline. So I just had decided after doing this to use an outline because I felt like it was kind of very, very messy this year. But it was a very similar project just without the outline. So I went in and I used the acrylic pour cells after using Liquify on this and just made 2 blobs basically, and just kind of went in with Liquify multiple times, just kind of manipulating the whole thing around. And eventually with this, I got to a point where I did the ink just like I did in the previous one, and ended up doing that pretty similarly, but I went all the way around instead of just around bits of it. And this was all pretty similar to what I had done before, but you can see here that I wasn't super happy with how that wing had turned out. It was kind of not the same shape as the other one, but I made it work. So I did a poll in my Instagram and I wasn't sure which one people would prefer, and generally they did prefer the previous one, but this one did also get some votes, so I wanted to show you how this one was made as well. So thank you so much for coming along with me on this little experimentation, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you were able to find something that you can take into your own art practice and enjoy. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.